Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review. I'm Lou Rosenfeld, and I'm joined today by Matt Webb. Hello, Matt. Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, we were joking in the warm-up before we started recording that you're kind of a challenge for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people who introduce you, and that you're like it's like you've done a lot. It's like a long laundry list with a lot of interesting highlights. So I'm going to punt, and I'm going to ask you to do your own self-intro, and then, well, maybe I'll pick and choose a few things, and we'll dig in deeper. But before I even let you do that, I just want everyone to know that Matt is one of our featured speakers at our next conference, Designing with AI, second edition, taking place virtually June 10th and 11th, 2025. We're actually about 5 weeks out when we're recording this. Really excited by the program and just glad you're part of it, Matt. So who the heck are you anyway?
Hi, I'm Matt. I founded a micro studio called Acts Not Facts. So it's a design-led technology product invention studio. I help big companies and small ones like invent new products, and I've done that in various ways for, I guess, like 20 years. And as well as working with clients, I work on my own products. So some folks may have seen, I think like it hit the New York Times at some point, a poetry clock I'm making. It's a clock that tells the time with a new poem every minute. That's 500,000 poems a year. It's the highest poem velocity of any consumer appliance that I know of. You may know different. And I'm currently manufacturing that in China. Previously, I co-founded a design studio called Berg in London. That's going way back. I've run startup accelerators with RGA Ventures. I built a vending machine that sells books
Ooh, I
and
like that.
tweeted when it sold a book. Like I think, yeah, I'm very lucky, and I've found a way of kind of professionalizing my like kind of curiosity about the world, I guess.
Yeah, and you seem to have been drawn early to a lot of new things. Like I think you've done some pioneering around podcasting, the first BBC podcast.
Uh, it's an amazing show. If anybody listens to BBC in our time, I was working at the BBC maybe 20 years ago, and I think that show is basically why I went and worked there. And I had an incredible boss who was just like the brief was basically find things that are happening in the world and bring them to the BBC. And one of the things that was happening in the world that was brand new then was podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like take this thing which like maybe a dozen people are talking about and go, can we use this on something the BBC is already doing? And long story short, like between kind of like working with the program team and like handwriting the XML files to like upload to the server, the BBC became the first national broadcast to do podcasts. And actually, I think that's a story of every project I've had, which is to find things that are happening with just a small number of people and go, oh, that's interesting.
Uh,
Let's do that in a bigger way.
I didn't know you had done In Our Time. I didn't know that was the first one, and I am a listener. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, I mean, it was opportunistic, right? And I kind of found myself getting involved in that because I'm a fan of that show. And it's funny, actually, it comes back. I also built a fan website for that show just a couple of years ago called bragoscope.com, which is a way of finding great shows in the archive of this radio show. But I built that using GPT-3. And that was kind of my first foray into building with large language models. And it taught me an enormous amount, getting my hands dirty like that. So it's been a perpetual presence in my life, that show.
Well, and I love that you get your hands dirty. I think that's really a hallmark of what you do. So let's talk about that. You are getting your hands really dirty now with AI. I think you've got a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think I mean that's kind of one of the things I'm going to be talking about at the event is what does the world look like when intelligence is too cheap to meter, I guess, right? When AI is everywhere in the world, what's that going to feel like? Like, what's it going to be like to live there? How do we design for it? And I guess one of my premises to even be able to talk about that is like, how do we know, right? And for I think the last 20 years, the way we've known with digital is we've had really, really good processes to do that. There are ways of kind of understanding that. And when you have a new technology like Gen AI, you can't really rely on your intuitions or our previous process. You have to get your hands dirty and feel kind of like, the material in your hands, the mud under your feet, um, to help build that intuition about what's possible. And so a couple of years ago, when it started happening, I was like, well, the only thing to do here is to start building. I'm not a great engineer, like very mid at all those kind of things, but like I started making things.
Okay. So, like, what is the sort of like how do you know what to work with next? What's the sort of bat signal that goes up in the sky that says, "Oh, Gen AI, Matt, you got to look at me. You got to work with me." I mean, you've done this with, like you said, podcasts. You've done so much with Internet of Things. How do you spot these so far in advance that you're already like a builder, a successful builder before people have even heard of these things?
I think some of this is was it survivor bias, right? I think there's probably quite a lot of things I've tried playing around with, and they feel like, they didn't make it through. There are certain things, for example, about VR that I find very, very exciting. There are like new experiences there, and that's kind of never come through. But I'll tell you the story about how it happened with Gen AI, because that's an interesting way of kind of like getting my hands dirty. Because I got involved in that quite early, and it's always to do with I'm trying to achieve something else. So I did kind of two things. I'm like, one is this Gen AI thing feels interesting and new and tried out. And that's kind of like almost loading it into my head and my hands and making it a kind of a material that I know how to use. And then I started building this website to find episodes from this radio show that I love. And there are 1,000 episodes. And I'm like, well, the archive that currently exists to find them is terrible. I want to build my own, right? So I start building this. I mean, it's just a side project. Like everyone's got a ton of side projects. So I started building this thing. And remember, this is just about radio at the point. Um, Also, I am lazy. I think lazy is a very, very important quality, right? And I kind of sat down and I'm like, oh, it's going to take me like 4 days to like get all the data off the BBC website and put it into my own database. I'm like, I'm too lazy for that, right? I was like, oh, maybe I could use GPT-3 for that. This is, I think, like the beginning of 23.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, maybe I could, right? Took me 20 minutes to write the code, to cost me $30 on my credit card to run it overnight. In the morning, the job was done.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I put that on Hack and Use, went incredibly popular. The comments on there that really stood out to me were people going like, oh, I didn't realize you could use large language models to extract structured data. In people's heads, it had been about chat. And so suddenly you found a new capability of that. And I think the other thing that happened when I sort of like sat down and analyzed what happened there is it kind of immunized me against AI hype. Like, so think about this, right? It was a job that was originally going to take 4 days and it came down to 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that in terms of Moore's law cycles, the 18-month cycle time, which is like the doubling power of computing, that's equivalent to 10 years. So very early on, I was like, oh, what did Gen AI do? It's not magical computers, it's not sentient machines. It's just computers got 10 years better overnight.
Mm-hmm.
That is all that happened. And you kind of, when the iPhone came out, imagine if we'd had that 10 years earlier, we wouldn't have known what to do with it. So I think I automatically kind of went into this mode of like, oh, we've got this 10-year advance. All the properties are inherent here. We just need to kind of like unbottle our imaginations to see
Mm.
what's already in front of our faces.
It's
So it
almost
was a helpful process.
like a. I almost get the sense of like an almost an arbitrage situation, except the differences are time. You see something 10 years ahead, all of a sudden you can work with it. There's that gap you can of time between like this future suddenly reaching us way sooner than we anticipated, and what that means in terms of what you can produce. So that like change in mindset from I thought this was going to be 4 days to 20 minutes is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah. I tell you what, the other thing that's remarkable is that then 2 years ago, that cost me $30 on my credit card to run it overnight. Last time I looked at the numbers for that, I think it would cost 3 cents
Wow.
to do that same job. So everything's getting much faster. But I think, it is interesting, this kind of like time arbitrage as well, right? Like, so I was working with how humans and computers interact in a conversational way. Last time we had a conversational UI boom, which I think was like 2015. And it's great to be able to kind of go back to that and go, these were some of the aspirations we had at the time, even if technology couldn't like meet those goals. And now we're not doing exactly that, right? Like we're not kind of bringing back conversational UI. We're not bringing back Clippy, but there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of social science research, which is all still really really valuable. And being able to go back to that is great.
Yeah, that's something I've seen actually as a publisher. There's these initial bursts of energy around new technology, and then there's like so I've seen this with books, and there's like often like a second generation of books that are like, all right, let's slow down and actually dig into the academic research and translate that because there's often an initial mismatch between the kind of fast moving let's put technologies into play world and the slower moving research and academia world. So that's another one of those almost arbitrage situations where you see a big gap between them in the beginning and then they kind of come together. I wanted to go back to the thing you said a little while ago, which is using Gen AI with structured information. And that's something I'm seeing right now. So I come from a very sort of uh, I don't know, I guess traditional information science background where we're trying to have structure emerge from information so it can be tapped for things like retrieval purposes. So you want meaning to emerge from structure, whether that's by the structure of documents, creating structure where there may not be, or highlighting metadata or developing new metadata. So we're working at Rosenfeld Media launching. Well, we've launched the Rosenbot, which is pointed and trained on all of our, I don't know, 1,000+ conference recordings, all of our the podcasts like this one, all of the other recordings, hundreds of other recordings we've done, and our books. And my mindset is like very traditional, like, well, how is search going to work? How are we going to do facets and filters and so forth? But I'm seeing this really interesting change in not just myself, but a lot of other people who are trying to find and interact with information, which is like, oh, if I'm prompting rather than searching, if I'm conversing with this big semantic mass, uh, it it's it's actually maybe more useful than dealing with. uh, Maybe it is it better? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. When you were working with the In Our Time archive, did you find that you were able to interact with that content in a more natural way because you had that interface? Or do you think the underlying way of drawing the semantic value out of that content was better and that led to a better experience? Or maybe you didn't have a better experience with that content?
I think one of the things you touch on is that search is actually one step in kind of like an epistemic journey. You're like sure, like a user is building knowledge as they search. And when you kind of look at kind of how we use, Google or any kind of search thing, the first thing you type in, like you don't know the words. Your first step is kind of going, oh, this is the parameter space. Like these are, you're hunting for kind of a new like, white goods or a dryer, and you're having to learn the terminology and to know what you're searching for, and then you know what to search for. You kind of narrow down again, and then you understand the parameter space. You make the trade space yourself, and you kind of go on again. And the search, it has always been conversational, right? Like it's always been this kind of like 15-step journey of like kind of I don't know, I'm learning. It changes you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I found interesting about like just scratching my own itch about finding new episodes to listen to, like about like particular moment at the fall of the Roman Republic or the evolution of crocodiles, or like Philippa Foot and her kind of like philosophy, is I often don't know what I'm searching for,
Mm-hmm.
but I know things which are adjacent. So one of my personal kind of like goals for making this website was, can I tantalize myself to like listen to episodes that I didn't know I wanted to listen to before? So it's kind of like taking part in, again, that epistemic journey. This, by the way, is why I think people are so drawn to using ChatGPT to hunt, to learn, to search, even though the results are often not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Because the epistemic journey piece trumps the accuracy piece.
Yeah.
Like if you look at it net, we learn faster that way. And I really wonder how we could do that across the archive of talks and books and speakers that you have. Like, that would be fascinating.
Oh, I'd love to work on that with you if you. Yeah, we'll talk. But I this podcast is now going in a little, or this conversation is going in a little different direction than I think I anticipated, because you're taking me back. When I was just talking about like traditional information science and the reliance on structure and metadata, and how that's changing. Although, the information architects who are listening to this podcast may remember that when we started out, we were often fighting a different battle, which is with the data scientists, the database people who, try to be so reductive to everything's, data. You should just, relational databases will solve all of our information needs. And you just have to reduce everything to data and known item searching. That's almost like the other end of the spectrum. So my mind is getting blown here, Matt. We've moved from like data retrieval to information retrieval to a kind of almost epistemic retrieval or interaction. But I got to let that sink in enough. I need a minute. So we're going to take a quick break. Everyone, you're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. This is Lou Rosenfeld, who's getting his mind blown by Matt Webb. We'll be right back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using the Rosenverse. First one, where else are you going to find 100 events that you can attend for free every year, 2 a week, about product management, product design, and UX design, plus a highly engaged Slack-based community of over 13,000 of your peers. What else are you going to find in the Rosenverse? You'll find hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conference presentations and community session recordings, all in one place from a single search browse interface. And behind those hundreds of recordings are hundreds of experts, people who have advanced the field, people who are your peers who are doing interesting new things, all in one place. Why else should you use the Rosenverse? We've been advancing the field of UX since 2005. You're going to find the most advanced content on such topics as design operations and program management, UX research, and a host of other topics, from climate UX to civic design to how designers can work better in product organizations. Lastly, you've been trusting our content since we started back in 2005. Whether it's our books, our conferences, our community sessions, well, we think you're going to trust the way we've brought those all together so that you can spend less time searching and browsing and more time learning and benefiting. I hope you'll try out the Rosenverse, and I hope you'll consider upgrading to a gold paid membership, because it brings you a lot more. Not only do you have access to hundreds and hundreds of recorded conference presentations, but you also get access to the Rosenbot, which is a ChatGPT 4 level chatbot that we've been training on all of our content, including our growing collection of nearly 60 books and counting. It's all there, it's all great content, and the Rosenbot is a cutting-edge way to get at it. You can try the gold membership out with a trial for 2 weeks. Give it a try. Hope you like it. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. This is Lou Rosenfeld. My mind has settled a bit, and I can kind of be coherent again, which is a relief, because I really want to talk with you, Matt, about what you're going to be doing at this conference, Designing with AI. You're one of the two featured speakers, along with Evetta Sampson. So excited by that. What are we going to be learning from you?
Well, I'm really excited to speak at this conference because I feel like it's a collaborative effort to figure out what we do with Gen AI at all, right? I think there's a big question here, which is what does it mean for us to move into a world of like, intelligence too cheap to meter, where it's kind of like not a kind of a major thing which is part of our lives. Like an iPhone, it's more like it's hidden behind every menu command or in every light switch. Like, what's it going to feel like to be in that? Like, what does it afford? And therefore, like, how will we design for it? And you can tell that the way I think is I like to start with specifics, what I call like weak signals, I suppose, like things I've observed from that other people have done or things I've made in my own hands, and then extrapolate. So what I'm going to do at the conference, hopefully, is like take a few of those different weak signals and extrapolate maybe in like four or five directions to maybe spark some imagination for the people in the room and hopefully start a conversation that I'm really looking forward to being part of.
So, give us some examples of weak signals. I mean, as you mentioned that term, I keep thinking of the long tail and what you can find in long tails, which is where trends begin their lives, become short head types of things. So, what do you have in mind when you say that?
So often that is things that people are doing. So that artists are doing, or young designers, or people in kind of extreme situations. For me, with Gen AI, like a lot of it goes instead to things that I'm prototyping. And what do I observe by looking at that? So I'll give you an example, right? So I had a dumb idea in my head at the beginning of last year. Actually, it's been in my head for a few years, right? Which is I want an app on my phone, which is a compass that always points to the black hole at the center of the galaxy. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. Like it was like I figured out how to like
Oh,
calculate the directions of the
it,
black
it makes
hole,
it
like
makes total sense. Why would you not want to
why not,
avoid a
right?
black hole?
Exactly right. Like it's like whatever, like tens of millions of light years away, and it kind of moves around us as the Earth rotates and like the Earth goes around the sun. And it's actually I cultivated the habit of being able to do this like once upon a time, and I found it very grounding. But then I lost the habit. I was like, there should be an app for that, right? So I go around and I talk to a bunch of engineer mates I've met over the years, and I'm like, I've got this idea for an app. Can we build it? And they're like, yeah, sure, Matt. Okay, right. And of course, it never happens. And then ChatGPT comes about, and I'm like, oh, I can write this with that. And this was now like an early example of what is now called vibe coding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I make this app. I can't write iPhone apps, right? Like, except now I can, right? So I make this app and I put it out. You can get it. It's called Galactic Compass, and it went viral, right? Like it ended up in the top chart for free apps in the US App Store in the travel category, which I love. And I receive emails from people who are in a place in their lives where they're feeling destabilized, and they look at this arrow and they find it grounding. Anyway, and so by the weak signal, I'm like, okay, so what does it mean where everyone gets to do the dumb idea in their head, right? But then in the course of extrapolation, you don't stop there. There's that line: the job of science fiction is not to predict the car, but to predict the traffic jam. So then that's what we do with that weak signal. What happens when we're all making mini apps because they're funny or to do a tiny bit of work? But then we go, well, how do we share them? How do we discover them? How do we trust them? What's the Creative Commons licensing for this? And then you start looking around for people who are doing that. And there are people who are doing things like that. And then we start getting a picture of what the future will be like, and maybe a kind of a post App Store, post iPhone home screen kind of world. And then we can design for where the puck is going. And that's kind of what I mean by taking a weak signal and amplifying, extrapolating it. And that's one of the worlds I'm actually going to be talking about in the conference.
So the weak signal might actually be an idea that you've started hatching, and and
Yeah.
you don't know necessarily where it's going to take you, but you know it's going to take you somewhere, and often it's like the periphery of that journey is really even more interesting than the perceived destination. So it sounds like in that case you were almost like seeing interesting things in maybe the IP aspects of this technology, maybe the distribution aspects. I mean, that makes it sound very dry and boring, to be honest. But I think what you're talking about is neither dry nor boring. So, are there other weak signals that you're starting to perceive right now?
Well, I mean, just to stick on the on this kind of like people creating their own mini apps just for a second, because I
Hmm.
think this is an interesting design. One of the things I love about design, by the way, is you're allowed to go like off in all kinds of directions, but you have to like come back to be grounded again. Um, you start going, how do people like maintain these? Simon Willison, by the way, has a great page, tools.simonwillison.net, where he kind of collects the tools that he's made. And then this started reminding me of a an old design movement called adaptive design. I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of exploration done in the kind of the early 2000s about how you design for end user adapting of apps and products. And we've got very used to in the last few years, like things being kind of like closed, right? Like there is no kind of like customization. We don't adapt it for our own purposes. We don't kind of like think as designers, how do we show the way that people can like take apart this app and reassemble it in new ways? And now suddenly all of those old ideas are new again. And so that kind of closes the loop for me, right? Like now we have a kind of a new starting point. And we can do that same job with like interacting with AI agents as kind of like virtual workmates, for example. It's a similar kind of journey.
Well, I mean, we are being changed. I think that's one of the things I'm learning from you, that whether it's the journey through information or the interaction with new technologies, we are actually, well, maybe we're not being changed. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. That sounds very passive. We actually are changing ourselves. We're giving ourselves some new opportunities to grow. I mean, I have lots of skepticism and even some fears, like many people do, about this technology. But I also I feel like we're being a little too black and white about it. There's a lot of good things that are going to happen, and I think if we start with our creativity, like you've such a great model for this, I think we're going to be okay. Um, Matt, we got to wrap up, which is a bummer, but I'm not going to let you go without you giving a gift to our listeners. What did you bring us?
It's a book. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to evangelize this book because it was new to me. When I was in my 20s, I was very into this book called Comics by the Italian author Italo Calvino. You may know him from Invisible Cities, he also wrote. And Comics is a series of very kind of like speculative, playful short stories about like the deep history of time. I think the first story is about when the moon is very close to the Earth and they kind of like all go up there to collect cheese or something. It's quite playful. I read the heck out of these stories. There are two books. Read them, read them, read them, read them, read them. Years pass. A couple of weeks ago, I happened to look it up online and I found that they've brought out a new complete collection containing stories just translated from the Italian that I've never read before. And it was such a joy to read something that I know so well and then to have something new there as well, that I can't stop telling people about it. So it's the complete Comics by Italo Calvino.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's like one of your favorite authors has come back to life to publish a new collection. That's wonderful. I wish that would happen with Kurt Vonnegut, but he wrote in English, so it goes. Matt Webb, thank you so much for joining us today on the Rosenfeld Review, and I can't wait to hear your presentation when you close out Designing with AI on June 11th. We'll see you then. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to it as well.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen, and check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.